In your research, which organizations surprised you the most in terms of how well, or conversely, how poorly, they aligned leadership style and context? And you don't have to name names, so that way we can protect the innocent, or maybe the not so innocent.
Absolutely. So coming into organizations as an external, very often it's because people have ambitions of doing something else or fixing something that they feel could be better or maybe even broken. And that means that very often we come in and the first thing that we try to find out with the organization is, what are the intentions? So what are your aspirations from a strategic point of view? What is the current operating model and what's the future operating model, and what does that require from your organization? Because that's a precondition for answering the question, what's the right setup? How do you shape your context so it delivers on the operating model, on the value creation, and on the strategy? And that means that when you meet organizations, you can't say that it's a bad or a good organization, but you can say whether they are in line with what they're trying to create. And very often
like that.
Yeah. So it's a slow slide out of alignment. So let me give you an example. I'm working with a client right now that are implementing a range of transformations in order to reach their aspiration. They are implementing new technology, which encompasses a lot of automation, robot technology. They are implementing AI in their customer service. They are changing the split between in and outsourcing. So they are going to have external partners working directly into their organization, which will change processes and procedures. And they've stacked it up because it's connected, right? And that means that the way of taking ownership and accountability in the organization needs to change, because they will go to a much more delegated model. The way that they centralize and decentralize needs to change as a consequence of that. They are changing from more localized processes to globalized processes supported by standard systems, which means that they need to ramp up their discipline culture. They need to ramp up the formalization of their processes, and they need to change the expertise base in the employee composition. So they need to upskill, and all of these things is not because they've been doing that, but all of these transformations trigger a need for finding out, how do we make the culture evolve in waves? So we build that ownership alongside with upskilling so that we make them ready, but also obligate them. So the empowerment moves, people get used to working in the new ways. All of that needs to happen through leadership. So the big transformation plan is now supported by a program of enabling the leaders, committing the leaders. Then they go in, work with their teams, work with the concrete transformations. So that way of working with the culture is very much at the essence of the research behind the contextual leader, that culture reproduces itself. If you want to influence it, you can do that through priorities, you can do that through leadership, you can do that through involvement and mobilization. And then you act your way into a new culture. So this is really a good example of, you asked about good and bad, aligned, misaligned. It's not misaligned because of bad will or wrongdoing.
Well, and I think that that's a really great way of looking at it too. We just sort of kind of go with the bad versus good, because there are definitely some stories out there.
Well, there are bad. There are cultures that are inherently bad. If you look at the criteria, saying the criteria is that the culture should be promoting, enabling the organizational aspirations. Then you've got a leader that has centralized all decisions with him or herself, has created a very weak voice culture because people don't want, to get in trouble. You've got a very, very siloed collaboration culture. That's not optimal to deliver on the value creation in the company, but it's created by very strong owners, or it's created by misconceptions of leadership, and leadership means my direct involvement and me directing everything. So it's not like there's not good and bad, but the recognition is very often that they've been sliding into that. It's not because of bad will, or it's because they've not been aware?
And that could be their personality. I mean, we've been in those kinds of organizations too. We have had some just bad leaders. Like, it was the board who brought us in. Usually we're getting brought in by, and it sounds like for you, we're getting brought in usually by fantastic leaders who are like, hey, like, things have changed and we need to meet the moment. And or we want things to change and we have to have the extra sort of hands on deck to figure out how to do that. But so I like what you said. I do think there are instances where there are bad. What you described could also not be bad, just like we've been in this organization too, where the former leader was so charismatic and so actually so caring that everybody just got used to going to them for everything, like ridiculous levels of going to this person. And this person is a fabulous person, but their life must have been truly hell. Because like things that should have never been on their plate, and they were basically making all the decisions. And so we were with the person who came in after, who was the opposite. This person was an introvert, also a fabulous leader, but an introvert. And so when everybody was coming to him like they used to do, you know, his response was, and what's your job title? Like, go forward, do your job. I got your back. Like, you know, basically like pushing them into like, and it was really deprogramming that had to happen to get people back into doing it on their own.
Yeah, you can say that the person has done this out of good intent. They built organizational habits that have reproduced themselves. So this has become the way we do around here, which is basically the definition of culture. And when you get into an organization and you want to change that because they've grown and it's still the same person, or someone new comes in, then you need to work with the enabling of the people, because empowerment requires that you've got the skills, you know how to make the decisions, you've got the risk appetite for doing so. So we need both the enablement and the obligation. So we need to create these play fields in the organization that sometimes have been narrowed with open communication channels up and down, right? So there are a lot of examples like this where a small organization has grown bigger. Maybe there's 600 now, they still behave like there's 60 people, which totally destroys the governance and the decision-making speed and so forth.
And then what I was going to say is like, so we do see that because we are in organizations where either it's a new leader who's come in and wants to get like, you know, their own ideas out there and working, or it's organizations where, you know, they're trying to grow their bench internally. And so those are just some of the examples, but you're right about probably the dominant way that we get good or bad for the environment is just this natural shift where things are changing externally and the organization has its habits, its culture, you know, the norms that it does. And now we don't actually have alignment, and we have to actually pull back together to sort of get back in sync with the environment.
Absolutely. And so you can say that there are two big drivers that require that we look at the organizational alignment. And one is the intentions of the organization. So if we have a shift in intentions, so for example, we need to start innovating more compared to what we've been doing the past 5-7 years, then that requires that we look at the contextual setup, the structures, the cultures, the people composition to make that happen. Or, as you refer to, a shift in the external environment, if dynamism goes up or risk intensity goes up, or as in the example I gave, that system openness changes so that others have influence into the organization, then we need to realign, look at our structures, decentralization, formalization, interdependence, and look at the cultures and find out which of the subcultures, there are 12 building blocks when we look at company culture, and find out which of these 2-3 subcultures do we need to work on to support that change in way of operating. And it's this alignment that makes the contextual view on leadership so interesting.